Equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Recall that the slope of a straight line in a coordinate plane is the ratio of the rise to run, also known as the change in y over the change in x. In the figure, the slope of segment AB is 4/8, since it rose 4 and went to the right 8. This can be reduced to 1/2. Part A says graph the equation y equals 2 times x plus 1 and y equals 2x minus 3. We can think of the first line as a line with a slope of 2 and a shift of 1, or we can rewrite it in slope-intercept form. We'll start at 2 and go up 2/1. For the second line, we will start at -3 and go up 2/1. What do you notice about the graphs of the two lines? What about the slopes of the lines? They are parallel and the slopes are equivalent or equal. The graphs of x plus 3y equals 22 and y equals 3x minus 14 are shown. Use a protractor. What is the measure of the angle formed by the intersection of the lines? What does this tell you about the lines? If you use a protractor, this comes out to a 90-degree angle, which tells you that the lines are perpendicular. Then it asks, what are the slopes of the two lines and how are they related? I'm going to change them into slope-intercept form up at the top. We see here that the first line has a slope of -1/3, while the other line has a slope of +3. They are related because they are reciprocals of one another. 3 and 1/3 are reciprocals, they're flipped over versions, and they are opposites. One is positive and one is negative. E. Complete the statements. If two non-vertical lines are parallel, then they have equal slopes. If two non-vertical lines are perpendicular, then the product of their slopes is -1. If I multiply together -1/3 and 3, that will give me -1. Your friend says that if two lines have opposite slopes, they are perpendicular. He uses the slope 1 and -1 as examples. Do you agree with your friend? Explain. No. Although the slopes 1 and -1 are perpendicular, it's a special case. But if we look at another set of opposites, those will not be perpendicular. For example, 2 and -2. When we multiply those together, it does not come out to -1. The slope that goes with 2 would actually be -1/2, and that would come out to -1. The slopes must have a product of -1 to be considered perpendicular, or you can think of them as opposite reciprocals. 2. The frets on a guitar are all perpendicular to one of the strings. Explain why the frets must be parallel to each other. The frets are all perpendicular to the same line or string, so they have to be parallel to each other. You can use slope relationships to write an equation of a line parallel to a given line. In this example, it says write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form. The line parallel to y equals 5x plus 1 that passes through the point -1, 2. Parallel lines have equal slopes, so the slope of the line required is 5. They are going to use point slope form, which says y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Remember, x1 and y1 come from a specific point. It says substitute for m, x1, and y1. We know that the m must be 5. And we also have the point -1, 2. Then they simplify by using the distributive property. We can see 5 times x is 5x. And here we have a leave, change, and then 5 times +1 is 5. They add the 2 to the other side, leaving them with the equation y equals 5x plus 7. B, the line parallel to y equals -3x plus 4 that passes through the point 9, -6. Parallel lines have equal slopes, or the same slope. So the slope of the required line is -3. It has to be the same. Use point slope form, substitute for m, x1, and y1. Then we will simplify. Minus a negative is the same thing as adding a positive. -3 times x is -3x. And -3 times -9 is +27. Then if we subtract the 6 from both sides, that leaves us with 21. The equation of the line is y equals -3x plus 21. What is the equation of the line through a given point and parallel to the x-axis? Y. The y is going to be explained through showing our work. We know that the y-axis has a slope of 0. I'm going to start with point slope form and plug in what I know. The first substitution I can make is replacing m with 0. With that in mind, when we distribute, this entire term becomes 0. So now I have y minus y1 equals 0. And then I can add y1 to both sides, leaving us with the equation y equals y1. So whatever that point is, let's say the point was -215. To turn that into an equation that's parallel to the x-axis, we would just have y equals 15 because that's the y1 value. Write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form. 4. The line parallel to y equals -x that passes through 5, 2.5. We are going to start with point slope form, but we need to replace the m with the slope -1. Then we need to replace the x1 value with 5. And the y1 value with 2.5. Now we will distribute and simplify. Number 5, the line parallel to y equals 3 over 2x plus 4 that passes through -4, 0. Again, I'm going to start with point slope form. We'll start by replacing m with the same slope as the line we're trying to be parallel to, which is 3 over 2. Then we will replace x1 with -4 and y1 with 0. This turns into y equals 3 over 2 times x plus 4. Then we will distribute And we can simplify 12 over 2 to 6. Writing equations of perpendicular lines. You can use slope relationships to write an equation of a line perpendicular to a given line. Write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form. A, the line perpendicular to y equals 4x minus 2 that passes through 3, negative 1. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals, which means the product of the slopes will be negative 1. So the slope of the required line is negative 1/4. The reciprocal of 4 is 1/4, but we need the opposite, so negative 1/4. Then use point slope form. Substitute m for negative 1/4. x1 will be substituted with 3, and y1 is substituted with negative 1. They simplify. You can see here they've changed the minus and negative to a positive 1. They've distributed their negative 1/4. Then they've moved this piece over to the other side, and they end up with the equation y equals negative 1/4 x minus 1/4. B, the line perpendicular to y equals negative 2/5 x plus 12 that passes through negative 6, negative 8. The product of the slopes of perpendicular lines is negative 1. So the slope of the required line is, flip it over, so the 5 goes on the top, the 2 goes on the bottom, and make it the opposite sign. It was negative, so the slope required is positive. We're going to use point slope form. Substitute for m, x1, and y1. Simplify. We have 5 over 2x. That minus a negative 6 turns into positive 6. 6 times 5 is 30 over 2, which also could be written as 50. So it could say y plus 8 equals 5 over 2x plus 15. Then we're going to subtract the 8 to the other side. The slope remains the same, but 15 minus 8 is 7. The equation of the line is y equals 5 over 2x plus 7. A carpenter's square forms a right angle. A carpenter places the square so that one side is parallel to an edge of a board, and then draws a line along the other side of the square. Then he slides the square to the right and draws a second line. Why must the two lines be parallel? Both of the lines he draws are perpendicular to the edge of the board. Now we're going to get into more specifics. These are considered coplanar lines, meaning that they're on the same plane. And it says two coplanar lines are perpendicular to the same line. Then the two lines are parallel to each other. So since they're both perpendicular to the board, then the two lines he drew are parallel to each other. Write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form. The line perpendicular to y equals 3 over 2x plus 2 that passes through 3, negative 1. Again, we're going to start with point slope form. We're replacing m with the negative or opposite reciprocal. So instead of 3 over 2, we'll have 2 over 3, but it's going to be negative. We also need to replace x1 with 3 and y1 with negative 1. Now we need to simplify. Number 8. The line perpendicular to y equals negative 4x that passes through 0, 0. Start with point slope form again. It's okay to write down the whole formula and then replace it as you go using your eraser. The opposite reciprocal of negative 4 is positive 1/4. We then need to replace x1 and y1 both with 0. We can then simplify and distribute. And in point slope form, the line perpendicular to y equals negative 4x is y equals positive 1/4 x. Would it make sense to find the equation of a line parallel to a given line and through a point on the given line? Explain. Not really. If the point is already on the line and you're making it parallel, you're going to find the exact same equation as the line you already have. Would it make sense to find the equation of a line perpendicular to a given line and through a point on the given line? Explain. Yes. If it's perpendicular to the line and going through a point on the line, then that point is where they intersect, forming a 90-degree angle. How are the slopes of parallel lines and perpendicular lines related? Assume the lines are not vertical. Parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have slopes whose product is negative 1.